ladies and gentlemen. We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals because at the end of the day, you guys, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Thursday, everybody. I got a very special guest for you guys here today. I'm going to bring him up in a second. I do want to just drop a little reminder, you guys. We got this little newsletter we started up a while back. I don't just sell out my contact list for this stuff, though, because I believe in earning your guys' downloads and all of that stuff. So if you want to subscribe to the newsletter, just go to thefreightcoach.com. It will auto prompt you to register it. It only drops once a week. We talk about the industry. We talk about fuel prices, rates, all of that stuff in there. So if you want to get in on that, go to thefreightcoach.com. Again, back to this very special guest here. This guy, this is why I love this guy. He actually stopped on his drive in this morning, turned around, went home, changed just to put Freight Coach Orange on today. So I got Mr. John Sutton with Sunset Transportation on the show. John, thank you so much for joining me here.
No problem, Chris. And it's like we talked about backstage, we are going to get Crayola to create Freight Coach Orange. That will be, I believe it needs to be in every elementary kid's crayon box. I really do. Critical color.
Dude, especially if you're going to, every kid's playing with trucks in the sandbox for the most part, right? So there should be something out there for it. And, I was thinking, I'm like, man, I got to make some like t-shirts and stuff for people. And, like the Orange Shirt Gang, Sonny Sharma with Zems Inc., he came up with this, man. It was like 4 years ago. We were at a conference and he was wearing orange as well. And this was before him and I had become friends. And he was like, dude, we're the Orange Shirt Gang. And I'm like, I got to the point now, John, where I'm like, I got to make some shirts for people and just hand them out that the Orange Shirt Gang is a thing.
Oh, safety vest, like Hunter's safety vest. I would wear a Freight Coach Hunter safety vest.
Dude, we actually have Freight Coach vests made, safety vests made for when we go out and do job sites for our customers and stuff.
Think you're on the right track.
Dude, absolutely, man. So let's, man, what's new? What's been going on in your world? I think like it's like it's another week. It's another headline. It's another thing that's going to end the industry or change everything or upend everything. And it's like, what's been going on in your world, man?
Dude, the perpetual hype cycle, the drip feed of what's next and how your business needs to be preparing for it. I still haven't got done preparing for whatever came across last week. So it's starting to, create a little bit of numbness, right? AI fatigue is a very real thing right now. And I think that we're on the downslope of that and starting to realize, what's vapor and what is actually material in regards to that. But between having to navigate the keeping up with the Joneses of the tech side, you also have the headlines that are impacting, buying behavior, both B2B and B2C, that you also need to we're navigating right now and trying to insulate both ourselves and our clients against. The international shipping side of things right now is quite turbulent, is a good way to describe it, to say the least. And it's just taking it a day at a time, an hour at a time, a minute at a time, and just we're in an industry where no 2 days are the same. Yeah. But as of the past few months, no 2 days have definitely been the same. That's for sure.
Dude, I'm right there with you. And, I'm glad you brought up a lot of that stuff about tech because like you're out there, I'm sure you're getting hit up all the time with, your title and what you're doing and everything for your role. But it's like, man, how do you decipher after you've demoed, you've seen a lot of stuff, John? How do you decipher what's real, what's not? Are there any like telling signs that you can give out to people who, they might not be the most tech savvy. They might not have seen as much as some others. And they're like, man, I don't want to get duped or, sold on something that might not even be a thing.
Yeah, you think traditionally like the quadrants, right? And for those who aren't watching the video, I'm actually making a quadrant shape right now, and it's really embarrassing. A lot of people try to look at it through the lens of a quadrant, and I actually look at it through the lens of a swim lane. As someone that's working to orchestrate a tech stack, I consider myself the lifeguard of what's going on in this swimming pool of tech that we have every single day. In one lane, I have all of the swimmers that are providing me rate intelligence. In another, I have order lifecycle management. That's primarily like the TMS, right? What's going to help me get freight picked up and delivered and build. Then we have carrier sourcing, carrier qualification, identity management, monitoring, onboarding, pretty much anything that helps to make sure that the carriers that you work with are, behaving, and then any new carrier, or how do you go about effectively sourcing a new carrier? That's the third one. The fourth one is visibility. How can you help me to make sure that I know where my trucks are at any given time? I do believe that the pizza industry has had a very large adverse impact on what we do in over-the-road full truckload. Because if I can see where the Jimmy John's driver or the Domino's driver is at any given time with pinpoint accuracy, why can't I see where my truck is? And so what are the tools that help you to facilitate that? And then the last is back office automation. What happens after that shipment is billed, and how can you get that invoice out the door with all the necessary collateral as quickly as possible? So we've got tech that's just swimming in those lanes all day, every day. And whenever you're going into a demo of a new product, you have to ask yourself, what lane do you primarily fall into, and what are you doing different than the swimmers that I already have in that lane today? Because if you can't differentiate yourself from a solution that I've already implemented that's resilient and working very well, then there's little to no value in what you're doing to me today. Are you innovative, or even better, potentially disruptive, right? Like we've seen some of these swim lanes have been heavily disrupted over the past 3 or 4 years. Providers that were once considered the crown jewel of the space now maybe in third place. And it's been pretty fascinating to watch over the years. But as you take these demos, what are they doing different relative to the space at large?
Dude, I'm like, I look at it where, you actually need, I think most people need to start with, where is your business actually at, and what are your customers actually requiring you to have, or suggesting that you have, right? Because people are going to hear a lot of what you're saying there. And, I know the size and scope of Sunset. I mean, you guys are a mature organization. You've been around for a while. You guys have, you've got that stability that's out there, right? So you guys are assessing things at a faster pace. You guys are probably getting way more requests from customers that are out there. What, from your stance, like for the majority of the people that are out there, what do you actually need from a technology perspective? Because for me as a broker, I'm like, dude, you can get away with a solid TMS. I would suggest getting some rating software if you can afford it, and load boards. And like, I'm talking bare bones. This is where we're starting. I'm not talking we have enterprise shippers, we have 100 weekly volume of shipments or anything like that. I'm talking for the people who are building their stuff.
Yeah. And this is not paid promotion right now, by the way, what I'm about to say. But let's think about it from the perspective as John and Chris, we go and start our own brokerage right now, Sunset Coach Logistics. Okay. And you and I, from day zero, we have to ask ourselves, do we want to do paper packets, or do we want to do digital onboardings, right, for carriers? And, if we're going to do digital onboardings, we can't just go out and get a large platform like a Highway or like an RMIS. That we're out over our skis in that regards. We're paying for a lot of horsepower that we're just not going to use. So you look at more straightforward, tried and true, and again, resilient solutions like my carrier packets, for example. There are various tiers. You're capable of paying a premium for any service that you want. But at the end of the day, there are legitimate entry-level basic solutions that are capable of helping to meet the needs that small brokers have. And a lot of those needs in 2025 are customer imposed as well. We are sitting down with small, mid-size, and large customers alike to have the conversation specifically. Walk me through your tech stack. Show me the logos that you're using today. And because I think that this has really started to pop up as of late due to the state of fraud at the turn of the decade with the Black Swan event that was COVID. We sat down with a lot of clients to walk through the concept of carrier qualification and the tools that are out there today to facilitate that. And that kind of opened the door for them to want to know more. And they want to go horizontal, and they want to understand your stack to the best of their ability. And I think that that's a good thing, because any broker worth their salt, they have nothing to hide. I am more than happy to pull back the curtain and show you everything that's going on behind the scenes and everything that we've made strategic investments in to be able to support your business from day zero, right? And I would be skeptical as a shipper of any broker that isn't willing to do that.
I'm right there with you, man. I look at it as like the two things that customers, shippers, however you want to, they're hiring brokers to bring calm to the storm that is the supply chain, right? And you need to be well versed. You don't need to be an expert in anything, but like you need to be very well versed in fraud, identity, and a lot of that stuff right now that most people, I don't know, I think they're over investing in some areas. And again, like if we're talking, Sunset Coach Logistics, we're just starting out here. Like we need something that we can afford, right? And there's a big thing out there where it's like, I look at it and dude, I'll use my company as an example here, John, as we're going out here and prospecting shippers. Like we're not going after enterprise level shippers because from the standpoint of this, the sales cycle is just way too long. Like we need revenue, right? Because again, I operate in the real world and I operate on dollar in, dollar out. I'm bootstrapping my stuff up and we need money. So we need to go after customers that are a shorter sales cycle. And we need to, as we're kind of going out, we need to assess like, all right, what are the intangibles? Visibility, I would say, is one of those ones that it is a phenomenal tool to have in your tool belt as a broker, knowing where your trucks are in the event that somebody hits you up like, hey, we need a location. Where is this guy at? You don't want to blow up the driver's phone. So you just pull up a macro point, for example, and you're like, oh, boom, the guy's 20 miles out per 15 minutes ago or whatever that looks like. Here's where it's at. And again, I think it's like it's being able to provide that solution for that question in the moment. And depending on the complexity and scale of the customers that you're working with, all of those requirements are going to vary out there at the end of the day. But I feel like the ones that are universal across the board, they need to know where their stuff is. They want to, because at the end of the day, man, communication is about the only value add most brokers can deliver from like bare bones fundamentals across the board. Letting your customer know where their freight is, calling ahead to facilities, communicating. And that's really as complex as I feel like most people need to make it when you're starting out and really building stuff up.
I agree. And at the end of the day, especially like on the visibility example, the client, they don't care how you're getting the data. As long as you have a trusted and reliable solution or way of getting that data and making sure that it translates to them in the manner that they're wanting. That can be as simple as over email, or that can be as complex as over API, Project 44, or similar integration. But at the end of the day, the data that you're furnishing to them has to come from somewhere. And between the various price points of a lot of those products out there, you're capable of getting it at an entry-level cost. You just have to make sure that it's the right product for you.
Yeah, it's, when you're going out there, because, I look at like, dude, we can sit here and talk about a lot of technology and all of that stuff out there. But like, when it comes down to like fundamentally building relationships, partnerships, all of that stuff, which is, everybody posts about this stuff all the time, right? Like, oh, it's about relationships. It's about relationships. What does that word actually mean to you, though, when you're going out there and you're building up a book of business?
Oh my gosh. From the carrier perspective or the client perspective?
Take it however you see fit here, man.
I think that in a lot of scenarios, especially in the non-enterprise space, like you mentioned, the relationship is, we've mutually agreed that we're getting value out of each other for the foreseeable future, right? Especially whenever you're operating off of handshakes. There are a lot of brokers out there that say that they're moving contractual freight without it having anything in writing. And that's a verbal, that's a handshake. We're mutually seeing value out of each other. And that's the business that's most susceptible to churn, in my possible opinion. So it's really, there are kind of various tiers to a relationship. How far are you willing to go to cement that this relationship is in fact capable of providing material value to both sides? And is that just an over the phone? Is that just a daily over the email? Hey, I've got this load. Do you have this truck? Or are you willing on both ends to be able to contractually lock in for 90 days, 180 days, for a year? And I would challenge the quality of the relationship in scenarios where pen and paper and ink may be going too far in the eyes of one of the parties in that relationship. Because at the end of the day, it takes three to tango in what we do. It's going to take a shipper, a broker, and a carrier. And in scenarios where they're moving in lockstep, it's a beautiful thing to watch happen, and how effectively those supply chains can be ran. But whenever the extent of your relationship was, I was happy with how you did on the last load, let's do it again, then those are the ones that are most susceptible to, volatility, to churn, in my opinion.
It's, I look at it as a lot of the situations, a lot of the markets that we're in, they're always uncertain, right? Because there is no guarantee of anything in life, really, right? Like, especially in business, but there's no guarantee, man. And a lot of people are emotional creatures in the moment. It's how you made them feel. I have found that when things go wrong, that is my opportunity to shine with my customers, because most people in adverse situations wait for the storm to pass, where I've just developed I'm going to rip this Band-Aid off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go through this. I'm just going to figure it out. Right. Like I might not say the right thing at the right moment, but I will figure it out. And from there, though, it's like, how do you balance that out, though? Right. Where it's like, for me, one of the things that I'm really, really trying the hardest on in my business is to establish consistency across the board, a consistent experience that my customers have, whether they move one load with us in a month or 500 loads with us in a month, they receive the exact same level of service and communication. Same with my carriers. I want to give them a consistent experience with us. I want them to know that we're taking care of them. They're not waiting for accessorials to come through. We're not waiting for a customer approval. If it's a layover, here's your layover, man. I'll get the money approved from my customer. It's doing that repeatedly, though, because there's always something that's going to be out there that people can point to as the boogeyman.
I agree. And we're in an industry, Chris, this is my fourth time on here, and I think that I've said this every single time, but it's so important. We're in an industry where 4% of the time things go wrong 100% of the time. And that is a very large exception rate. Right. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason or another, that appointment is no longer going to be able to be honored, regardless of whose fault it is, either the shippers, the receivers, the brokers, or the carriers. There's a lot of cooks in this kitchen, and that makes it really easy to screw up a recipe. But it's how you handle that 4%, like you mentioned, is what clients remember. And that's how they interpret their working relationship with you. And, you could have done that load the last 100 times perfect, 100 times, but now the one time that it's gone wrong, it's very capable of souring your capabilities of how you're able to handle that lane. And it opens up the door to explore, replacement. Right. And you see the posts all the time, and I do believe that there is a lot of credence to them, and it's not just noise, regardless of how hyperbolic some of the numbers may be. But you see the shippers that are keeping a notebook of the number of cold calls that they are getting a day, and they just create a tally, and they're just like, yesterday 27, today 36. Like they're coming out of the woodwork. A lot of these brokers that are revenue at any cost are promising things that they quite frankly can't deliver on, but at least it gives them an opportunity, right? And the best thing to protect you from that is your relationship and how you work with that shipper whenever the times get tough.
I really break it down like this, John, just to kind of summarize what you're saying here. I would rather lose a customer for telling the truth than keep one on a lie at this point in my life. You know what I mean? Like all these promises, because they are getting bombarded. They're getting absolutely bombarded. But I view it as like, man, I want to be that kind of light in all the noise of like, damn, those guys were different, right? Like they weren't that pushy. They had a purpose for the call, right? And I was just talking to this with my friends, the E-Carrier Check. They got a podcast, and I was on there yesterday with them, with Nate and Jared, and I'm like, when it boils down to it, there's been a different response to cold calling now than there has been in the past, right? Like I've actually found that the rejections are nowhere near as bad as they were when I was gunslinging for freight back in the day. And I do truly equate it to this, John. We call with a purpose, man. Like we do open deck, we do full truckload. Like that's it. If you don't do that, if you're LTL heavy, have a nice day. Thank you so much for your time. That's really the purpose of my call. I was trying to find that out. I'll remove you from our list. And it's having that intent behind why I'm calling, because I want to set the tone from day one. They might not remember the first conversation that we have. I want to have everything set the tone. Day one, this is how we operate. We are upfront. We are honest. We might be honest to a fault, but good, bad, or indifferent, you are going to know exactly what's going on in every single situation.
I agree. And honesty to a fault, that resonates so much with us. But I'm ready. I think that we were ready to jump on here today to talk about really the state of carrier identity solutions, right? And just the state of your working relationship with your carriers today and how your customers perceive that.
Yeah. And I think like we were kind of jumping all over the place.
I know.
Man, but we were talking about that, right? From a software standpoint, where do we go? And here's where I sit, right? Like no matter what, the only real way to combat fraud and identity theft is to reutilize your in-network carriers that you've already done the work with, right? That's the only real tried and true method out there where you're going to minimize your exposure. And, I look at it as anytime I get a load, I'm reaching out to the carriers who have done that load for me in the past. First and foremost, every single time. That's where I want to sit, because like load boards, and again, I love load boards. I love Truck Stop. I love DAT from that perspective, but they're a tool for us to utilize, not to rely on entirely to operate our business.
And I say it all the time. Load boards are a tool. They are not a crutch. And we see all of the memes, right, about the post and pray. And you can think that that's funny, but I promise you, your shipper does not think that is
Correct.
Funny. There is frequently 5 figures, 6 figures, maybe even 7 figures worth of commercial value of cargo on that truck. And to hear that in most cases you're entertaining bringing in someone into your ecosystem that you have never worked with before to handle the majority of your shipments, that is very unsettling to a shipper. And this is why we're seeing a lot of the contractual verbiage pop up that shipments for certain shippers, especially Fortune 500 ones, from what we've been seeing, are not able to be posted onto a load board. Going as so far, Chris, to actually have a compliance team member on site at that team member or at that shipper hawking the load boards, looking for their freight to be posted. This is not just one client. This is a theme that has began to pop up. A lot of folks were burned. Actually, I think it's close to 100% of shippers in some capacity were burned over COVID due to fraud, deceptive, suspicious activity, the works, and they're taking matters into their own hands. And what does that translate to me, Chris? You created so much disruption for me that I am willing to take on a salaried employee to try to prevent this from being able to happen, because that will cost me less than the downstream revenue impact that I had by falling victim to fraudulent or deceptive activity. Let that sink in.
Yeah. I think a lot of people approach it, John, as how much money can I make on this load? They don't look at the downstream effect.
I hate the word ripper. Chris, that is a word that I just absolutely cannot stand. I don't ever want to hear the word ripper.
Oh, dude, I'm right there with you. I look at it as, every single shipment that we pick up. I mean, dude, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment that we're moving and product that we're moving out there. And it's your responsibility, right? Like I don't take any of this stuff lightly. I'm not going to sit here on a pedestal and say I never did. I was a young kid who thought I had everything figured out too. But like now, man, I look at everything like, dude, I do not make any exceptions to anything that we do out there when it comes to servicing our customers. And, I guess that like for me, I think that it's the difference between somebody who's had to build something from day one, dollar one, and somebody who inherits something, right? Like once you have freight to kind of work, you kind of think it's always going to be there, right? I'm guilty of this. I've built and I've seen this stuff happen over my career. But now, man, when I see something that has $250,000 in cargo value, I'm like, fuck, we gotta make sure our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed on this one. We're calling.
And you can't take a Temu carrier, right?
Yeah, dude.
No offense, but there are Temu carriers out there. You know who you are.
It's dude, I'm right there with you. And I think like at the end of the day, I personally think if there's any action item for a lot of organizations to look at is it's their incentivization model. How are they incentivizing their people to cover the freight? Are they, again, yes, you want to make money. I am a capitalist. I want to make as much money as I possibly can. But at the end of the day, I'm not willing to risk a entire customer for $50. And I don't know if everybody shares that sentiment.
No. And there are a lot of brokers that in that scenario would have just gave that load back. I'd rather just make this my client's problem than me honoring my commitments. Right. And the incentivization is a big one. Right. The great Papa John business role model of mine. If it can be measured, it can be improved, and it can be improved. It can be incentivized. OK, so incentivization is the final goal. But what are the measurables? And what percentage of brokerages, Chris, do you think are capable of pulling the number out of their hat right now of the percentage of their freight that gets posted onto a load board?
I bet everybody knows, but there few are going to admit.
I agree. And you start to measure the percentage of freight that gets put onto a load board. And in my personal opinion, if it's over 30%, load boards are a crutch for your organization. If it's under 30%, it's a tool. And every broker has that toolbox, and you need to pull your tools out in a certain order. And you mentioned it earlier. The first tool in your toolbox is history and active working relationships. Every single load should always start there within reason, right? And then you start working your way through what rates do I have on file? Who are my historical carriers? What opportunities do I have in my digital freight matching stack if I've invested in one of those platforms? And then after you've demonstrated, that you've talked to at least 3 carriers, that you've talked to at least 5 carriers, then you can release that opportunity to begin transactionally sourcing a carrier. Now, I want to add a very interesting caveat to there. And I spoke with a carrier recently, and what we got onto load boards. Everybody talks about load boards, right? Because they're such an interesting ecosystem. They really are. I think that the load boardization of our space is totally different than what you see in other segments like finance, accounting, healthcare, as to how we keep things moving in a free market on the transportation side. And we got on the topic of load boards, and this is a carrier that we work with daily, multiple times a day. And they said, I haven't seen this lane getting posted. And I said, well, what do you mean? And they're just like, oh, we like to, we understand that we can check our email, and we understand that you have other portals that we can go to. But in reality, our team members like to just go to the load boards and see what you have posted. And it's just like that is meeting that carrier in particular where they are. And I think that's a very interesting lens to look through the load board environment through. Is there are some carriers that don't feel like the relationship has been deteriorated because they see a load that they've historically ran posted on DAT that they prefer to run. They just use that as the signal that you have the load and will gladly reach out to you. So that's definitely, one lens that people need to be looking at it through. But make sure that you know what percentage of your freight is being on the load boards, and look at your service levels as a function of those loads that got put on the load boards, your on-time percentage. Look at your claims rate as well. I think that one of the things that we had found, Chris, was there was a strong correlation between shipments that had been put onto a load board in some capacity and our inevitable downstream on time and claims rate compared to shipments that were not, let alone denied claims or scenarios where we had to make a client whole out of pocket as a result of that thing, as a result of that claim. Look through it upstream. And then one of the things that everyone should be measuring to see how frequently a particular team member or a particular client or a particular lane or how well it has been procured is the concept of a loads to carrier ratio. Over any given time frame for this user or for this client, how many carriers did it take me to handle all of their loads? Did it take me 25 carriers to handle 100 loads? Did it take me 66 carriers to handle 100 loads? And the closer that gets to a one-to-one relationship, the worse you stand to be able to represent yourself as someone that has a well-procured carrier network to be able to support that client. That between those two metrics, that can really help you to unlock some insights about what your transactional buying behavior is. You can still be moving transactional freight on repeat carriers, but it's the order and the madness by which you approach sourcing that carrier that is so critical right now in a space where that is very cost sensitive and service sensitive at the same time.
Dude, I had nothing to add to that, you guys, at all. That right there, clip that out and re-listen to that. And you can, with new AI tools, you can take that soundbite, drop it into an AI tool, and it could create a process for you guys to follow from a carrier selection strategy. There's a little free tip for me from my man John here. But dude, I'm gonna wrap with that, man. Like, there's nothing we can top from there, dude. How does anybody reach out to you though to find out more about what you guys got going on?
I'm always available on LinkedIn. John Sutton on there, Director of Corporate Strategy for Sunset. Easy to find, ugliest headshot on LinkedIn, so don't have to look too far.
Oh man, John, thank you so much for that threw me off. That is going to be it for today, you guys. I'm actually going to be live tomorrow up in Vancouver, Washington for the SPI Agent Rendezvous Conference up there. We got a couple of guests coming on. We're going to be talking about a bunch of great stuff tomorrow morning. But that's going to be it for today. As always, if you got value in what you heard, subscribe to the show. If you're feeling really ambitious after this one, which you better be, rank the show on iTunes and Spotify, because if you saw value, that's how your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.